No one in that village imagined that the most dangerous person among them wasn't one of the muscular American boxers in the ring, but the young girl in a simple uniform, walking silently through the crowd. Calm, unshakable, as if the insults and mockery were nothing more than distant noise, until her silence began to weigh heavier than any threat. The small village of Pingyao in the heart of China never imagined it would become the stage for a confrontation that would change the way the world viewed martial arts. Known for its ancient stone streets and ancestral buildings, the place was a symbol of tradition, honor, and silence. But that day, the silence was broken by the loud, disrespectful laughter of three blonde women, strong, confident, dressed in Western training gear and gleaming boxing gloves. The three were international stars of professional boxing: Alyssa King, undefeated middleweight champion; Brooke Sanderson, known for her overwhelming strength in the ring; and Val Taylor, the most experienced of the trio, famous for defeating men in mixed tournaments. They were there for one reason only: to humiliate on global broadcast the practitioners of traditional kung fu. What began as a cultural documentary project quickly took a more aggressive turn when they started provoking local masters, challenging them in public, filming offensive commentary, and laughing at China's centuries-old tradition. The villagers watched in silence, offended yet powerless. After all, these foreigners had fame, sponsors, and followers all over the world. It was as if they had come to mock the very identity of a people. Until, in the middle of the crowd, a figure emerged with steady steps and an unshakable gaze. Her name was Lin Zhao, young, fragile-looking, dressed in a plain olive-green uniform with no marks or symbols. The crowd parted as if instinctively aware something important was about to happen. Lin didn't utter a single word as she walked toward the improvised ring set up in the middle of the village's main street. The boxers laughed. Brooke pointed mockingly. "Is this for real? She looks 14. "This has to be a joke." Val crossed her arms, confident. "Let's end this farce and prove that tradition doesn't beat real technique." The local master only nodded to Lin. No speeches, no ceremony. Only the sound of the nearby temple bells, marking the beginning of something no one would ever forget. The fight began with Alyssa King, who stepped into the ring with wide strides, flaunting her muscles and self-confidence. Lin stood still, hands down, breathing controlled. Alyssa charged with a straight punch. Lin shifted a mere fraction to the side, dodging as if she had predicted the move before it even happened. With a slight turn of her hip, she delivered a single palm strike to her opponent's stomach. Alyssa dropped to her knees, breathless, and collapsed unconscious. Total silence. Brooke didn't wait. She stormed into the ring, enraged. She unleashed a flurry of rapid jabs. Lin seemed to glide between the punches like smoke. When the opening appeared, she landed a precise kick to Brooke's ankle, throwing her off balance. Before she could fall, a touch to her shoulder spun her in the air. She landed flat on her back. Unconscious. Val hesitated, but pride outweighed caution. She tried circling Lin, studying her movement, but within less than 5 seconds, she was on the ground as well. Lin's expression hadn't changed once. The crowd, who moments before had watched in silence, now began to murmur in shock. The defeat of the three boxers spread across the globe. Videos went viral within minutes. Influencers tried to discredit it, calling it staged. But the cameras were there. Doctors confirmed it. None of the fighters had visible external injuries, only muscular collapses, fainting, and complete loss of balance. Techniques that defied Western understanding of close combat fighting. But what no one noticed at that moment was where Lin looked after the fight. Not at the crowd, not at the cameras. She looked up toward one of the village rooftops, where a mysterious figure was watching her, someone who knew this was only the beginning. The true reason behind the boxer's presence in China had yet to be revealed, and Lin Zhao, the serene-faced girl, carried a secret capable of shaking not only the world of fighting, but also a powerful web of interests behind the clash between East and West. Before Mei Lin challenged the American champions, she was a silent shadow among the Wudang Mountains. Daughter of two masters who never appeared in public, she was raised far from technology, fame, or vanity. Her name was never listed in tournaments. Her face was unknown even among kung fu practitioners themselves. But her training, it was merciless. She woke before sunrise, bare feet on the frozen ground. She ran across slippery trails, struck tree trunks until her knuckles bled. Her masters, who were also her parents, didn't just teach her forms and movements. They taught discipline, absolute control of mind and body, and most importantly, how to read intention before the strike. By the age of 12, Mei Lin could predict an opponent's move just by observing their breathing. At 16, she defeated a group of 5 armed men in an ambush on the road between Huayin and Xi'an. The incident was buried. The men belonged to a criminal organization with military ties. The government chose silence over shame. But that event drew the attention of a powerful man in the shadows of international sports, Richard Voss, an American businessman influential in professional boxing leagues and gambling houses. A man who saw martial arts not as legacy, but as profitable entertainment. When Voss discovered the existence of the girl from Wudang, he conceived a bold idea: to stage a humiliating spectacle where American boxers would teach respect to Kung Fu. For him, it was pure marketing. Record the defeat of Chinese tradition, sell it as content, generate clicks, and further reinforce the invincible image of Western boxing. What he didn't expect, however, was a twist. China itself would authorize Mei Lin's participation. Officially, she was sent as the representative of a new generation of martial artists. But behind the scenes, her master and father had another plan. They want to turn our legacy into a joke. Show them there are things money cannot buy: precision, humility, and deadly silence. While Mei Lin traveled to Pingyao under official government escort on the other side of the world, the 3 boxers trained with arrogance and disdain. In Los Angeles, videos were posted on social media with captions like, "We're going to knock out philosophy," "Kung Fu is cinema, boxing is reality," and "Ready to send her home with a cup of tea." Alyssa King had grown up in hardship in the Bronx. She had been fighting since she was 12. She learned to use her fists to survive and climb in life. Her record stood at 27 victories, 24 by knockout. Brooke, a former soldier trained in close combat, trusted her brute strength so much she laughed whenever the word spirituality was mentioned. And Val, at 34, was the most tactical, observant, but blinded by her own fame. She couldn't imagine losing to someone who didn't even wear gloves. They arrived in China as celebrities. Cameras, flashes, interviews, everything orchestrated by Voss. Even the improvised arena in Pingyao had been designed as marketing, a staged contrast between modern and traditional, the real world against Eastern dreams. But there, where every stone in the street carried centuries of history, where monks still trained with staffs in silence, something ancestral was stirring. This wasn't about a fight. It was about honor, about boundaries being crossed. On the night before the event, Mei Lin didn't sleep. Seated in meditation on the temple roof, she gazed at the cloudless sky. Her lungs drew in the cold mountain air, and her body was in complete stillness. But inside, something burned. Not anger, not hatred. Something far older than that, the need to restore balance. In the darkness, her father appeared beside her, as if he had materialized from the air itself. "Are you ready?" "I've been ready since the first time they laughed." On the morning of the event, the village of Pingyao felt like a different place. Film crews, drones, sponsors, influencers, and journalists flooded the narrow streets. An elevated ring had been built right in the center of the main square, between ancient temples and centuries-old houses. The contrast was striking, the modern noise clashing against the serenity of traditional architecture. The local crowd respectfully kept their distance. It wasn't fear, it was reverence. They knew that ground carried ancestral energy, and turning it into a stage for Western mockery would be punished, even if not by human hands. The American boxers arrived like movie stars, smiling, made up, wearing skin-tight outfits and gleaming gloves. They waved at cameras, struck poses, gave interviews. Richard Voss, in a white suit and venomous smile, oversaw everything personally. At his side, a translator updated him on every detail of Mei Lin's behavior. "She's too calm. That'll be perfect in the final cut. The audience loves an unexpected defeat," Voss remarked, never realizing how ironic that statement would become. Meanwhile, Mei Lin arrived without spectacle. No makeup, no entourage. She wore only a plain olive-green cotton uniform tied at the waist with a maroon sash. Simple shoes. Nothing in her hands. She walked through the crowd in silence, as if she were just another villager. But every gaze followed her with reverence. In the ring, Alyssa King warmed up by pounding makeshift heavy bags. She would be the first. The mood among the three boxers was festive, as though they were about to shoot a reality show, not step into a real fight. "Let's start with a show. Then we humiliate her for good. Let her try anything that's not a punch. She'll see what reality is," Brooke said, laughing loudly. At exactly 10 a.m., the temple bells rang. There were no official referees. The fight would unfold under the eyes of tradition. The first match was announced: Alyssa King versus Mei Lin. The audience fell silent. Alyssa entered dancing, rolling her shoulders, shifting her weight lightly between her feet, full of confidence. She had already beaten fighters with far more technique. What could a village girl possibly offer? Mei Lin entered with calm steps, eyes fixed on the stone floor of the ring. When she stopped in the center, she raised her gaze to Alyssa. There was no anger, no challenge, only presence. The gong was symbolic. An elder struck a ceremonial drum twice. Alyssa moved immediately, opening with a jab. Mei Lin pivoted smoothly to the side, almost like a dancer. Alyssa followed with a left cross, closing the distance. Mei Lin lowered herself gracefully, placing an open palm touch against the side of her opponent's knee. The movement looked far too gentle to do harm. But Alyssa collapsed, as if the ground itself had vanished beneath her feet. She hit her back and did not rise. Silence. Mei Lin stepped back quietly. The crowd murmured. Voss shot to his feet outside the ring. Brooke didn't wait. "Think taking one down means you've won. Just wait." She jumped into the ring without a signal, launching a violent barrage of strikes. Mei Lin retreated 2 steps. On the third, she spun her body, redirecting 2 punches with a circular sweep of her hands. Then she advanced, claw-shaped fingers striking beneath Brooke's collarbone, a centuries-old move called Long Hu Zhao, the dragon's claw. Brooke dropped to her knees, coughing. She couldn't breathe. The cameras caught the terror in her face. Western spectators began splitting between shock and disbelief. Val hesitated. She studied carefully. The most tactical of the three, she knew something here was far beyond the realm of sport. But her pride weighed heavier than her instinct. "You're not beating me with magic, girl." She entered the ring. The air grew denser, no music, no background noise, only the slow steps of 2 women closing in. Val kept her distance, using footwork to confuse. But Mei Lin never attacked. She only watched. Her eyes, calm as a predator's, tracked Val's shoulders and ankles, reading every micro-movement. Val made the mistake, a false advance with a right straight. Mei Lin twisted her hips slightly, blocked with her forearm, and delivered a sequence of 3 precise touches. On the shoulder, on the waist, on the center of the chest. Val fell backward, breathless, bewildered, helpless. 3 fights. 3 defeats. Less than 3 minutes in total. The audience erupted in murmurs. The Chinese crowd remained silent. Respect. Voss, enraged, shouted at security, ordered the cameras shut off, screamed that this would be edited, that nobody needed to know a cultural fight turned into national humiliation. But something even more unsettling followed. One of the village elders approached him, bowed slightly and said in English, "What you saw here was only balance, but if you disrespect our history again, next time, we will not send a girl." As the fight videos spread across social media at lightning speed, a new conflict was growing outside the ring, hidden, silent, and far more dangerous. The defeat of the American boxers was not only a shock to Western audiences, it rattled powerful interests, multi-million-dollar sponsors, and above all, the ego of a sports empire that refused to be challenged by something it couldn't control. Behind the scenes, Richard Voss's phone rang non-stop. Sponsors pressured him to reverse the narrative. Media agencies demanded answers. Streaming platforms threatened to break contracts. What was meant to be a spectacle, humiliating Eastern folklore, had become living proof of the superiority of a forgotten art. But for Voss, it was more than financial loss. It was personal revenge. Years earlier, Richard had been expelled from the International Martial Arts Federation for attempting to bribe judges at a secret tournament in Thailand. Since then, he had carried a quiet hatred for what he called profitless traditions. He didn't just want to turn boxing into showmanship, he wanted to destroy everything that embodied balance, honor, or philosophy. And now, an anonymous girl from China had wounded his reputation during what was supposed to be his greatest marketing coup. But Voss was not alone. His right-hand man, Marcus Tate, a former fighter and private security expert, was tasked with something darker. Uncover who Mei Lin really was, and why the Chinese government had allowed her participation. It was Marcus who found she had never appeared in any official tournament, no footage of her training, no record in traditional schools. But he uncovered something curious. A classified 2017 military report mentioning a 15-year-old girl who neutralized 3 armed agents in less than 12 seconds. The report had been buried. Marcus knew what it meant. The girl wasn't just a martial artist. She was likely part of a secret traditional training program with political or military aims, the kind of thing no nation admits exists, yet all try to develop. Meanwhile, in Pingyao, Mei Lin remained in absolute silence. After the fights, she gave no interviews, accepted no invitations, allowed no photos. She returned to the temple where she was staying and spent the day in meditation. But even there, she knew she was not safe. At nightfall, 2 Western men were spotted prowling near the temple with cameras and listening devices. A monk drove them off, but not before noticing something strange. One of them was carrying a concealed weapon. At that moment, another layer of the story revealed itself. The Chinese government knew the fight would attract foreign agents, and it had used Mei Lin as bait. The permission for her participation was never about sport or national pride. It was an intelligence operation. By winning, she destabilized the Western narrative. By drawing in figures like Voss and Marcus, she brought the enemy into the open. And while the world debated strikes and techniques, Chinese analysts were mapping connections, trails, and intentions. Mei Lin was not only restoring Kung Fu's honor, she was exposing the cultural war behind the fights. But there was one element outside everyone's control. Val Taylor, the defeated boxer who, unlike the others, remained silent after the event. She did not return to the hotel. She posted nothing on social media. She vanished. 2 days later, Val was seen walking alone along a trail near the Shaolin Temple. A monk found her sitting before an ancient statue, tears in her eyes. What she did wasn't just technique, it was something else. It was as if she could see inside me. Val, who had dedicated her life to physical combat, now felt broken inside. Something in Mei Lin had shattered her certainty, not her strength, but the emptiness she felt when facing someone who didn't fight to win, but only to balance. And there, seated before the silence of the temple, Val made a dangerous decision. She wanted to train with Mei Lin. 2 days after the event, the world was still trying to digest what it had witnessed. In fight forums, coaches attempted to explain Mei Lin's movements with terms like biomechanical precision, nervous system control, and advanced neuromuscular response. But none of them could understand how someone so unassuming had dismantled 3 champions in mere seconds. While Western media tried to discredit the event with headlines like "Unofficial Fight Raises Doubts" or "Boxers Victims of Cultural Trap," something far more serious was unfolding behind the scenes. Richard Voss had disappeared. After leaving Pingyao with his security team, Voss never reached Beijing Airport. His last known record was on a narrow road, on his way to a meeting with investors in the city of Taiyuan. The car he was traveling in was found abandoned beside a rice field. No signs of forced entry, no signs of struggle, only an envelope with a single word written in traditional Chinese calligraphy: balance. The news leaked only in select circles. Local authorities denied any involvement, but those closest knew. This was no ordinary abduction. It was a message. When Marcus Tate learned of his boss's disappearance, he reacted with brutality. He returned to Pingyao, no longer as a spectator. He gathered former military bodyguards, hired local mercenaries, and began a silent siege of the region. He didn't believe in symbolic messages. He wanted answers and revenge. Meanwhile, Mei Lin remained in isolation. Her master had ordered complete silence. But the arrival of Val Taylor at the temple on the 3rd day after the fights marked a turning point. Val knelt at the entrance, not with arrogance, not asking for anything, but simply waiting. The same master who had trained Mei Lin watched her from the top of the stairs. His gaze was stern, but attentive. Her presence was not unexpected. "You didn't come for redemption. You came because something inside you broke, and you want to know what it was," he said. Val only nodded. For the first time, she didn't speak. She didn't argue. She only felt. In the days that followed, Val was allowed to observe training, but not participate. She watched Mei Lin practice alone, repeating the same movements hundreds of times with hypnotic slowness and perfection. Each gesture seemed to carry a message: an elbow strike, a sidestep, a spin. Everything had intention and meaning. It was during this period that Mei Lin began to feel something she never had before: inner imbalance. She had won, completed her mission, humiliated those who mocked her people. But something within her was shifting. And Val's silent presence, a woman who had come to defeat her, yet now looked at her with genuine respect, made Mei Lin question whether victory had truly been victory. On the morning of the 5th day, during meditation by the river, Mei Lin had a vision, something that hadn't happened since her childhood. She saw Voss kneeling, blindfolded, in a dark hall surrounded by candles. Behind him stood hooded figures, like ancient judges. Voices thundered in her mind. He brought imbalance in pursuit of profit. The answer must be balance through truth. She opened her eyes, breathless. She knew what it meant. The Council of Spiritual Guardians of the Mountain, a legendary circle said to protect the ancient secrets of martial arts, had taken action. This only happened in extreme cases. They did not seek earthly justice. They imposed spiritual correction. When the natural order was violated, they restored it with ancestral force. But Mei Lin also knew something else. If Voss died there, the silent war between East and West would no longer be ideological. It would become real, and it would be her responsibility to stop it. That same night, Val quietly entered the meditation hall. For the first time, she spoke sincerely. "What you made me feel in the ring wasn't defeat. It was awakening. I need to understand what you know, but something tells me you're carrying a burden now, and maybe you shouldn't carry it alone." Mei Lin looked at her. For the first time, she hesitated. "Do you want to learn?" "I want to understand." "Then come with me, before it's too late." Mei Lin retrieved the old map hidden inside the tea box on the altar. There was only one red mark on the paper, a forgotten temple high in the Taihang Mountains, forbidden, guarded, where the council gathered. They would have to reach it before the sentence was carried out. Across town, Marcus Tate intercepted coded messages sent by Chinese frequency monitors. He knew something was about to happen, and if there was any chance of finding Voss, it was by following Mei Lin. The game had changed. At dawn, Mei Lin and Val set off quietly from the temple. They carried only the essentials: water, a bag of light provisions, the map, and 2 sets of clothes. The trail to the Taihang Mountain Temple wasn't on GPS or tourist maps. It was ancient, used only by messengers of the spiritual councils, and protected by seals written in ancestral characters, a path that only opened for those with inner silence. As they climbed through jagged rocks and dense forests, the contrast between the 2 women was clear. Val, accustomed to intense training, felt her body demand strength, but it was her mind that faltered. She tried to frame the journey through Western logic: mission, rescue, confrontation. Mei Lin, on the other hand, said nothing. Each step seemed aligned with the flow of energy around her. Her body adapted to the terrain as if it had known it for millennia. At more than 1,000 meters in altitude, they reached the Gate of Silence, a natural stone formation where the ancients said only those who carry no intentions could pass. Mei Lin walked through without hesitation. Val stopped. The air grew heavier. For a moment her chest felt crushed, as if something invisible was pushing her away, but she took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and thought only one phrase: "I don't want to win. I want to understand." When she opened her eyes, the weight was gone. She passed through. Meanwhile, in the city below, Marcus Tate advanced with his team. They were well armed but dressed like tourists, discreet. They used drones, long-range listening devices, interference to block tracking. But no matter what they tried, they couldn't find the 2 women. It was as if they had vanished from the map. In an attempt to trace them, Marcus ordered an invasion of the temple they had left. The monks, silent, did not resist. They simply watched with calm eyes. One elder approached Marcus and spoke in clear, resonant English. "You seek in haste what can only be found in time. Their path is not physical." Marcus, impatient, shoved the old man aside and ordered searches. One of his agents found the false map Mei Lin had left behind, and just as she knew they would, they followed it, straight in the opposite direction of the true path. In the mountains, after hours of climbing, Mei Lin and Val arrived at the Temple of Emptiness, carved into stone and nearly invisible from a distance. Guarded by 4 statues, each representing an element: earth, water, fire, and air. A monk awaited them at the entrance, as if he had known they would come. "The council is assembled. The sentence will be carried out at sunset." Mei Lin only nodded. Val, her body exhausted, couldn't hold back the question. "Are they going to kill Voss?" The monk didn't answer. He simply opened the way. Inside, in a torch-lit underground chamber, Richard Voss knelt, bound with black silk ropes, staring at the 7 elders of the council. His face was not that of a repentant man, but of someone who still believed he was in control. Do you think this will go unpunished? I may be the face, but there are 10 more like me. You can't stop the world." The central elder replied, "You are not here for what you did. You are here for what you represent. Imbalance between what is art and what is weapon." At the chamber's entrance, Mei Lin appeared. The elders paused the ritual. She stepped forward. "He cannot be killed. Not like this. It would feed the very war he created." A murmur rippled through the chamber. She was challenging an age-old decree. The whole world is watching. If he dies in the shadows, he becomes a martyr. But if he lives, with the humiliation of failure, with truth exposed, then there will be balance. The elders exchanged looks. It was a break in protocol, but one that made sense. And balance accepts disruption when born from truth. Voss was released, but with a mark that could never be erased. His defeat was not physical, it was ideological. He would leave as the man who tried to destroy the legacy of ancient arts and was spared by them. But he would not forget, and Mei Lin knew he would return one day with new faces, new tactics, new plans. As they left the Temple of Emptiness, Mei Lin and Val said nothing. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, it was respectful. The kind of silence born when two people understand without words that something deep has been transformed in both of them. Until that moment, Mei Lin believed she was merely an instrument of balance, a body trained to restore order whenever it was broken. But when she confronted the council and pleaded for Richard Voss's clemency, something inside her changed. For the first time, she chose. She acted not as a disciple, but as someone who understood that balance isn't imposed. It's inspired. Val, in turn, was no longer the invincible Western fighter guided by statistics, contracts, and status. She had been knocked down, not in the body, but in the soul. Her journey was no longer about techniques or belts. It was about unlearning what she had learned wrong, and learning humbly what books and coaches had never taught. When they returned to the village, they were greeted with surprise. Many thought they would never come back, but the news of the council's decision had already spread. Monks, practitioners, and even foreigners still in town watched as Mei Lin and Val walked to the central temple, now side by side. Mei Lin's master was waiting. "You broke tradition," he said without anger. "But perhaps that's what tradition needed." Mei Lin only nodded. Her gaze was different now, still steady but more human, more flexible. She hadn't lost her strength. She had found a new kind of it. Then Val did the unthinkable. She bowed deeply before the master. "I don't want to be a disciple. I want to be a learner, even if it takes the rest of my life." The master looked to Mei Lin. "The responsibility is yours now." Mei Lin understood. Val would not learn from the monks. She would learn from her. In the weeks that followed, their relationship shifted from cautious to symbiotic. Mei Lin taught with gestures, with her body, with repetition. Val absorbed like a sponge. She failed, fell, got hurt, but she never backed down. Pride was gone. Only the thirst to understand remained. Their inner battles began to surface. Mei Lin wrestled with the pressure of becoming a reference point, something her training had avoided at all costs. Val grappled with the weight of everything she had been. The arrogance, the harsh words, the sponsors who were now abandoning her. But during one training session, under a fine rain that veiled Pingyao's fields, something finally changed. Mei Lin had taught Val to use breath as a guide for movement, the basis of Neijia Quan, where each motion is born from the inside out, not from impact but from intention. Val tried. She failed. But that day, turning her hip and channeling her weight into a simple palm strike, she hit the wood with clean precision. The sound that echoed wasn't brute force, it was connection. Mei Lin smiled for the first time in a long while. "Now you've begun." News of Val's staying in China spread worldwide. At first, Western media mocked her. Then came curiosity and then respect. She was called a traitor, a sellout, a spiritual slave. But Val didn't respond. She only trained. In silence. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Richard Voss resurfaced. At a conference in Dubai, flanked by investors, he declared he was rebuilding the concept of global fights. He announced a new tournament called the Apex Arena, where styles from around the world would face off. No rules, no tradition. Only profit. But at the end of the interview, a journalist asked a direct question. "And what about Mei Lin? Will she participate?" Voss smiled, but the color drained from his eyes. She already had her moment in the spotlight. Now it's time for new faces. The message was clear. He wanted to erase what had happened, rewrite history. But he had forgotten one thing. History was already alive, and now stronger than ever. In Pingyao, Mei Lin and Val watched the conference video on an old phone without sound. Mei Lin switched it off and put it away without a word. "Will he come back?" Val asked. "He never left. But next time, we'll be ready too." 4 months passed. Pingyao, once a forgotten village of quiet temples and distant hills, was now discreetly watched by satellites, infiltrated by drones, and constantly visited by curious tourists who just wanted to see where it all began. The locals tolerated it, but the place's true spirit had returned to introspection, a vigilant silence, as if waiting for something. At the heart of the temple, Mei Lin and Val trained without cease. With each new day, the level rose. Strikes were faster, movements more precise, their reaction time shrinking. Val was no longer the same fighter who had stepped into that ring in August. Her eyes had changed. Her muscles were more agile than merely strong. And most importantly, she had learned not to attack, but to listen. But preparation wasn't only physical. Mei Lin knew Voss's return wouldn't come with punches. It would come with strategy, spectacle, and manipulation, and it didn't take long for it to materialize. In January, the world was stunned by the official announcement of Apex Arena Battle of Nations, a mega event sponsored by tech, betting, and entertainment giants. Location, Las Vegas. Global broadcast. The stated goal: gather top fighters of different styles in elimination bouts without judges' interference. The audience would decide who advanced, but to Mei Lin, the true goal was obvious: to turn tradition into product, to bury her victory under tons of lights, marketing, and new lab-made faces. To complete the picture, Voss unveiled a new American fighter, Zara Cross, hyped as a prodigy of combat biomechanics, molded by elite military trainers with mixed training in boxing, kickboxing, and jiu-jitsu. Young, charismatic, and, unsurprisingly, physically very similar to Mei Lin. It was a provocation. Zara was announced as the only opponent capable of facing the living legend of Pingyao. But Mei Lin had not accepted the invitation, and she knew. Refusing meant being forgotten. Accepting meant stepping into the trap. When Val learned of the tournament, she grew uneasy. This was no longer a fight, it was a war of narratives, and neither of them knew if they could win it with only what they had learned so far. On the third night after the Apex Arena announcement, a new figure arrived at the temple, a monk named Chao, former guardian of the archives of the Five Lost Styles, kept secret by the Wudang monks. He was old and bent, but his presence filled the air like dense smoke. He asked to speak with Mei Lin alone. "You think the battle will be between fists and ideas, but Voss doesn't play on just one plane. He has gone too far. He has stirred something that was buried, and now things that should never have been awakened are moving again." Mei Lin didn't understand at first, but when Chao showed her the parchment sealed with black wax, a chill ran down her spine. This was no mere modern contest. Ancient forces were involved. In his ambition, Voss had financed secret archaeological expeditions along the Tibetan borders, seeking mystical relics tied to ancient masters of internal energy, forgotten, forbidden techniques that manipulated not only the body, but the perception of time and reality. The pieces were falling into place. Zara Cross wasn't just a fighter, she was the final experiment. An artificial replica of what Mei Lin represented, not in soul, but in flesh. And to face that, Mei Lin would have to go beyond physical kung fu. She would need to access what her ancestors called Xin Wu, the art of the silent heart. A stage of mastery where technique becomes invisible and the fighter moves not against the opponent, but against the world's own imbalance. But there was a risk. No one who trained Xin Wu returned the same. The line between enlightenment and total dissolution was thin. Whoever accessed this art might cease to be a person. Val tried to dissuade her, but Mei Lin, as always, was firm. If I don't go, he'll turn everything into spectacle, even our pain, our history. And so, under the full moon of the last night of January, Mei Lin entered the sacred chamber, alone. For the world, Apex Arena was about to begin. But for Mei Lin, the true combat had already begun. Within herself, Apex Arena, Las Vegas. March 1st, 9 p.m. The world stopped to watch. Lights cut through the desert sky like swords. Giant 360-degree screens displayed the fighters' faces like modern gods. Influencers, celebrities, investors, and even politicians filled the stands in black tie attire, awaiting the moment that promised to change the history of martial arts forever. But those who looked at that colossal stage did not see the truth. What was about to happen there was not just a fight between two women. It was the clash between the real and the manufactured, between tradition and combat engineering, between what had survived for centuries and what had been born in a lab. Mei Lin walked to the center of the ring with silent steps. No music, no performance, no sponsors on her uniform. Zara Cross, on the other hand, appeared amid smoke explosions, red lights, and epic soundtrack. Her sculpted body, her cold expression, her movements too precise to seem human, everything about her was calculated. A perfect creation. Cold, efficient. The two faced each other. Mei Lin felt. She didn't think. She didn't analyze. She was in the state of Xin Wu, where everything around her was perceived in deep silence. She didn't just see an opponent. She saw every tension in the shoulder, every micro-expression on the face, the slight imbalance in the right ankle. And more than that, she sensed that Zara was not alone inside herself. It was like fighting against a dark mirror. The gong struck. Silence. Zara charged forward with abnormal speed. The crowd held its breath. A right cross, a spinning kick. Anyone else would have been dropped, but Mei Lin only breathed. With a subtle shift of her hip, she slipped past without effort. She wasn't fighting the strikes. She was fighting the intention. Zara was strong, incredibly strong, but predictable. Every move the product of calculation, every technique a reproduction. And it was in that detail that Mei Lin found her opening. In the third minute, after an aggressive sequence, Zara froze for half a second. A flaw in rhythm, imperceptible to the crowd, but crystal clear to Mei Lin. She advanced, 3 steps, a spin, a palm strike to the chest. Zara staggered. The stadium reacted. One of the sensors on her body beeped, loss of balance. But then something changed. Zara's eyes flickered as if another consciousness had taken control. A protocol had been activated. She rose, faster, more brutal. Her attacks began breaking the laws of human biomechanics. She moved like an automaton, but with the rage of a caged animal. Mei Lin was struck, a straight punch to the abdomen, then a high kick to the shoulder. She dropped to her knees. Blood trickled from her mouth. For the first time, her body faltered, but not her mind. As Zara charged for the finishing blow, Mei Lin closed her eyes, and in that instant, she accessed what no trainer, engineer, or scientist could comprehend, the absolute center of silence. The moment where there is no defense, no attack, only pure presence. She rose, her gaze calm, her body wounded, yet steady. Zara hesitated. Something about that moment made no sense, because there was no longer any intention in Mei Lin, no will to win, no trace of ego. And that was what destabilized her. When Zara struck, it was like punching the wind. Mei Lin moved one last time, a touch to the side of the neck, another to the hip, a gentle push at the base of the spine. Zara froze, paralyzed, no pain, but no command. The crowd didn't understand. Silence filled the stadium. Mei Lin stepped closer, placed her palm on her opponent's chest, right where the heart beats, and spoke softly, "You don't have to fight for them." The sensors on Zara's body began to beep. The internal system failed. And then for the first time she cried, real tears. The fight was over, but not with a knockout, with a liberation. Zara collapsed to her knees, not from pain, but from inner collapse. Mei Lin stepped back. She didn't celebrate. She didn't raise her arms. She only bowed to the crowd, the ancient gesture of Kung Fu. From his luxury box, Voss crushed his crystal glass in his hand. He knew he had lost. Not the tournament, but the control of the narrative. The entire world had just witnessed not a technical victory, but the difference between being trained and being true. The broadcast of Apex Arena became the most watched video in the history of combat sports, but not for the reasons Richard Voss had hoped. Not for the violence, not for the victory. It was for that silent moment when one warrior touched another's chest and made the entire world understand that some battles are only won when you refuse to keep fighting. Zara Cross never returned to the media. She vanished from the spotlight. Rumors claimed she had left the United States and gone to Tibet, searching for her own traces of humanity. Others said she had never been entirely human. The truth, however, was deliberately lost. Because for Mei Lin, it didn't matter who Zara had been, only who she had become. Richard Voss was exposed. Hackers leaked documents about the development of artificial fighters, illegal military contracts, and genetic manipulation in countries without regulation. Though he denied everything, he lost investors, political support, and little by little disappeared from the backstage of sports. Val Taylor kept training in Pingyao, now as an instructor for foreigners who sought not the glamour of martial arts, but what lay behind each gesture: patience, silence, and the rediscovery of what is essential. And Mei Lin, she returned to the temple. She refused interviews, publishing contracts, invitations to star in films or open academies. Instead, she dove deeper into the study of internal energy, meditation, and forgotten styles. Not because she wanted to escape the world, but because she knew the world was now paying attention. On the temple walls, a symbol was painted in black ink, two lines crossing at the center, representing the union of strength and compassion. Beneath it, a phrase was carved into stone: "To win is not to dominate, it is to set free." Mei Lin's legacy would not be measured in trophies, but in echoes, and they were already spreading. Years later, a new video began circulating on social media. A young foreigner, unknown, challenged a Chinese master in an isolated village. She wore a simple uniform, and her movements resembled Mei Lin's. The caption read only one sentence: "She does not teach, she inspires." Mei Lin never appeared in the video, but everyone knew who was behind the new generation, quietly rising far from the spotlight. Not to fight, but to restore what had been forgotten. If this story touched something within you, more than just a fight, more than just a victory, then share it. Share it with someone who needs to remember that true power does not lie in strength, but in balance. Speak of Mei Lin, speak of Val, speak of the silence that topples shouts. And when the world tries to convince you that only those who shout the loudest win, remember this: those who truly win are the ones who know how to listen. Leave your comment below. What touched you most in this journey?